Dr. David Diamond spent decades working as a brilliant neuroscientist, researching complex brain diseases like Alzheimer's. He was comfortable in his lab, completely disconnected from the world of nutrition, until a routine blood test handed him a terrifying diagnosis. His triglycerides, a type of fat in your blood used for energy, along with his cholesterol levels, indicated he was at a 15 times higher risk for a heart attack than the average person. He did exactly what he was told. He became the ultimate good patient, following standard dietary guidelines by strictly cutting out fatty meats. He threw away his egg yolks, swapped butter for heavily processed margarine, and filled his plates with supposed heart-healthy whole grains. The physiological outcome was a disaster. Despite following every rule, his weight shot up by 20 pounds. His blood markers severely worsened, his metabolism became chaotic, and his doctor told him he had tried his best, but it was finally time to start taking statins. Most people in that chair simply head to the pharmacy. Diamond went to the medical library. As a career researcher, he decided to pull the original clinical trials and raw data that formed the bedrock of his doctor's advice. The conflict was undeniable. The more he followed the rules, the closer he came to the very heart attack he was trying to avoid. For Diamond, the evidence on his own blood charts spoke louder than the medical consensus, forcing him to consider that the officially prescribed cure was actually accelerating his disease. To find the source of the error, Diamond looked back to the 1950s and a researcher named Ancel Keys. Keys is the man who first popularized the hypothesis that eating animal fat causes heart disease, yet he held no degree in nutrition or cardiology. His doctorate was in the physiology of fish. Keys might have remained obscure if it weren't for a moment of intense national panic. In 1955, President Dwight D. Eisenhower suffered a sudden, severe heart attack. The public was terrified, and the medical establishment faced immense pressure to provide a simple, easily digestible explanation for this sudden health crisis. The public eagerly accepted Keys's theory that dietary fat was the culprit. Curiously, they ignored the president's most glaring risk factor. Eisenhower smoked 4 packs of cigarettes a day. This chart is the piece of evidence that solidified the fear of fat. Published by Keys in 1953, it plots fat intake against heart disease death rates across 6 specific countries. It creates a clean, perfectly correlated upward trend. The more fat a country eats, the more people drop dead from heart attacks. The reality behind the graph was far more complex. While Keys published findings for 6 countries, he actually had data for 22. He omitted the 16 countries that didn't fit his trend line. When you plot all the available data together, that terrifying upward trend instantly vanishes into random noise. This 1953 paper served as a primary catalyst for the anti-fat movement. It provided the proof necessary to bake these assumptions into the very first official dietary guidelines, creating a legacy of low-fat recommendations that persist in hospitals and clinics today.
The establishment's refusal to accept reality is most obvious in what they call the French paradox. The traditional French diet derives up to 40% of its daily calories from fats, including high amounts of saturated fats, which are simply fat molecules that stay solid at room temperature, like butter or cheese. According to the rules derived from Keys' work, the population of France should be suffering from epidemic levels of clogged arteries. Instead, they have long maintained some of the lowest heart disease rates in all of Europe. Calling this a paradox is a convenient academic trick. When real-world data contradicts a theory, honest science discards the theory. The nutritional establishment simply labeled reality an anomaly to protect their dogma. This same manipulation of data drives the industry behind statins, the cholesterol-lowering drugs Dr. Diamond was prescribed. Pharmaceutical companies run advertisements claiming these pills reduce the risk of a heart attack by a massive 36%. Look at the actual clinical trial data. Out of 100 patients, in the placebo group taking a sugar pill, 3% of people suffered a heart attack. In the group taking the statin, 1.9% suffered a heart attack. The absolute difference between taking the drug and doing nothing at all is a microscopic 1.1%. To turn that 1.1% into a marketing miracle, pharma relies on relative risk. Relative risk is a metric that measures the probability of an event occurring in one group compared to another. By dividing that tiny 1.1% difference by the 3% baseline, they transform a marginal clinical benefit into an impressive 36% claim. They flip the script when reporting side effects like memory loss or drug-induced diabetes. Suddenly, they use absolute numbers. telling patients the risk only increases by a tiny 1 or 2%, making the severe risks sound mathematically insignificant. Billions of dollars in medical treatments are distributed to patients annually based on a statistical shell game rather than dramatic biological results. So why do we find cholesterol inside the arterial plaques of heart attack victims? Biology shows that cholesterol is actually a repair mechanism sent to heal vascular damage. Blaming cholesterol for heart disease because you find it inside a plaque is exactly like blaming the police for a robbery just because you see them at the crime scene. The real biological drivers of the damage are chronic high sugar, refined carbohydrates, and insulin resistance, your body's inability to effectively use the hormone that regulates blood sugar. These are the forces that create inflammation and make your blood sticky. Dr. Diamond never filled his prescription. Instead, he restored his health and lost the weight by abandoning the modern guidelines and returning to a low-carbohydrate diet of unprocessed foods and natural fats. Your body is a flawlessly honest system. It does not react to government guidelines or pharmaceutical advertisements. It responds purely to biochemistry. Reclaiming your health requires questioning the institutional dogma and looking directly at the raw data.